Hello, and welcome to Pop-Up Prayers. I'm Jaryn Nelson. I am your virtual prayer partner here in Pop-Up Prayers, and I'm a licensed spiritual practitioner at the Centers for Spiritual Living, Sarasota. Today, our prayer is for saying yes to God's will. And I don't know about you, but oftentimes in the past when I've heard someone talk about resigning to God's will, saying yes to God's will, there was just this thing in me that was like, oh, no, I know that's just going to be terrible. God wants for me what I would never want for myself. It's going to be just the worst thing on earth. I'm going to have to go to Africa. Just all these terrible things go through your head when the whole subject of doing God's will comes up. However, I'm hoping that after I read a little portion of Ernest Holmes with you from the Science of Mind textbook, and after some prayer, I'm hoping that you'll see things in a different light in regards to saying yes to God's will. So this is Ernest Holmes in the Science of Mind textbook, and he says, true prayer must be, thy will be done. But the will of God in this prayer is not a submission to the inevitability of evil or limitation. It is a knowledge that the will of God is always good, and good is capitalized. How do we know what the will of God is? We do not, other than this. The will of God cannot be death, because if we assume God to be the principle of life, the principle of life cannot produce death without destroying itself. The will of life has only to be life. Everything should tend to expansion and multiplication in the divine plan. That is the will of God. It has to be beauty, truth, and harmony. Anything that will enable us to express greater life, greater happiness, greater power, so long as it does not harm anyone, must be the will of God for us. So I hope you're feeling a little bit better about what God's will is like. Not anything to dread at all, right? I mean, who would dread greater happiness, greater power, greater life, beauty, truth, and harmony? Not I. All right, with that, let's go ahead and head into prayer now. We come into prayer with immense gratitude because we recognize that there is one principle of life, one principle of good, and absolutely, positively, we are one with it. We affirm that God is for us. Therefore, we confidently release all fear, reluctance, and resistance to aligning with God's will, and we surrender, knowing that our heart's truest, deepest desires and its will are one and the same. We know there is a divine purpose for our life. We willingly step into this purpose, knowing that the principle of life is presently guiding us in ways that open us to greater growth, a greater embodiment of our indwelling Christ consciousness, and a greater experience of joy, peace, love, beauty, wholeness, and all other God qualities. We gladly accept greater happiness, greater power, and a greater experience of a fulfilling life as we allow the principle of life to do its will in, as, and through each of us. As we are all connected through the one principle of good, we know that any one person acting in accordance with the will of God can cause no harm to another. As even one person surrenders to God's will, the entire world receives benefit, and we gladly and gratefully share the benefits with all. We declare, life is leading us rightly. We say yes and gratefully join with the will of life to live our life's purpose, live our best life, and be light in the world. We let God's will be so, and so it is. Okay, doesn't that make you feel better? God wants for us what is our truest heart's desire, because our truest heart's desire is coming from that higher self, the divine within. So it's all good. So it's safe to surrender to God's will. I hope you feel that now. I've got an affirmation for you. The true desires of my heart are innately aligned with God's will, and I experience greater joy, greater power, and a great, fulfilling life of purpose. All righty, let's take that into the week. Namaste. Until next time, be well, be in peace, be in joy, and let's surrender to God's will. Bye-bye for now.